Welcome to the Sage Family Podcast,
where we explore natural homeschooling, gentle parenting,
simple living, and family adventure.
I'm Rachel Rainbolt, the Sage Parenting Coach, coming to you from the Pacific Northwest, where I live wild and free in connection with my 3 wildlings and the Papa Bear and our fixer-upper on the beach. This is episode 71, and today I'm here with Rachelle Crawford talking about messy minimalism. Rachelle is a mother of 3, the author of the new book Messy Minimalism, and the founder of Abundant Life with Less. She makes minimalism doable by offering a grace-based approach to living clutter-free. So join us around the campfire and let's get living the family life of our dreams. Rachelle joined me for episode 38 of the podcast when we shared a conversation about simple holidays, and she is back again to talk about Messy Minimalism, which is the title of her sweet new book. Reading it felt like she invited me over to her place to drink something yummy and chat and laugh about her journey with minimalism. Thank you for coming back to help make minimalism accessible to all the messy Sage families, Rachelle.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat today.
Will you introduce yourself again and remind us who you are and what you're passionate about?
Yes, so I am Rachelle Crawford. I have a blog at abundantlifewithless.com, and I'm on Instagram at abundantlifewithless. I have been writing about minimalism for almost January will be 5 years since our family went minimalist. And I started a blog like within a few weeks and just started documenting and sharing our journey. And then just kind of fell in love with writing and storytelling and teaching through writing. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm also a school nurse at my kids' school, which is fun part-time. I do that 1 to 2 days a week. And I was a labor and delivery nurse for 11 years and stayed home full-time for about 6 years, and then went back as a school nurse. And I just love it. I love the kids and the ice packs and the braces and the Motrin, and it's just a lot of fun. So it's been a really unexpected new career, and I'm just really grateful for it.
I always love to hear when people embrace like the intentional choices and meeting of needs in different seasons of life. That's always such a beautiful living example.
Yeah, they called and asked me as we went back to school during the pandemic, it was a new position. They've never had a school nurse before. And I get to partner with an awesome nurse, and we share the job. And yeah, it was exciting and nerve wracking at the same time. But I've just loved it.
Okay, so let's talk about messy minimalism. What is it? What is messy minimalism, and how did you find your way into it?
Yeah, so messy minimalism kind of came about because when I went minimalist, I really tried super hard to make my minimalism in my home look like it looks online, like perfect images, clear spaces, and just kind of trendy aesthetics, right? So I started decluttering and really just worked hard to kind of like get it right. And a few months into it, it just kind of all crashed and burned. And I started to second guess if this was even for us, if I could live this minimalist lifestyle, and maybe it is unattainable like I assumed for so long, because I have 3 kids and I just kind of assumed minimalism was for like, single people living in vans and backpacking around the world. But so what we did when I kind of hit this wall was like, just take a break. We took a break from decluttering. I just kind of reevaluated, like, is this for us? And is this worth the effort? Because it kind of felt like I had just swapped my clutter for this new sense of overwhelm, just trying to keep it all perfect. And then what reemerged was messy minimalism, I call it, because I tend to be more of a messier individual. I always have my whole life. And my kids are a little bit messy. We kind of just leave things as we go about our day. And what messy minimalism did was just allow me to embrace the season of life we're in and the mess that comes with, having a family and the craft supplies and the activities, but also paring back on all the inessential items and the clutter that I've been holding on to for so long, and just kind of enter it with a more grace-based approach, knowing that it's not going to look a certain way. And that's not the point of it, isn't to make it look minimalist. The point is to change the feel in your home and to create more capacity and space and time for meaningful work and to just connect and make memories. So anyways, I just started just a more grace-based approach to minimalism, and kind of like, I like to call it like minimizing minimalism, right? Like letting go of unrealistic expectations as well as the clutter.
Oh, I like it. And it's the perfect time to have this conversation because my office space is a bit of a like Santa's workshop situation. So there's
Yeah.
like ribbon and wrapping paper and
Yes.
just stuff all around my desk on the floor right now. So it's perfect timing. You have this formula in your book: minimalism minus perfection plus sustainability times grace equals messy minimalism. I loved that.
Yes. Oh.
Okay, let's talk about identity work. Can you explain why we start with the who instead of the why?
Yeah, so I've been creating kind of like digital resources, and I wrote some free ebooks and whatnot to help people get started and stay motivated. And I always talked about like, you need to find your why. Why are you doing this? And I thought I went minimalist in one moment where I heard this mother of five talking about how they were minimalists, and they moved across the country really easily because the packing wasn't so bad because they were minimalists. And that's when I went minimalist, in this like aha moment. And I thought that's what it was. I thought like I had this big enough aha moment, and all of my whys kind of came clear. Like, I want a cleaner home. I want to spend more time with my kids.
And you were in a church, right? So it makes it
Yes.
easy to picture like the light shining down on
Yeah,
this woman
right.
as she talks
Yes. Yeah. I was at my church mom group, and she was there to talk about healthy meal planning. And then for some reason she mentioned minimalism. And so I thought, oh yes, exactly. Here we are.
choir of
Um,
angels.
Yes, yes. But then I started, like, I would help other people declutter, and then they would kind of give up. Like, I would go to friends' homes or talk with people online, and it was like it wouldn't stick for whatever reason. And I tried to figure out, like, why does it stick for some people? Why does it seem easy? Because I know a lot of people I've met online where it's like, oh, this happened and I did it. And this happened and I did it. And I thought it had to do with big aha moments. But I was reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is
Love that book.
a phenomenal book. I probably need to read it again here soon. But
So good.
he talks about two different habits that we can form: goal-based habits and identity-based habits. And he differentiated them with goal-based habits are like, you want to declutter your home so your countertops are clear, or you want to get out of debt so you create a budget, or you want to lose some weight or get a promotion or whatever. In the habits you create will move you towards or away from your goal. But when you get to that goal, oftentimes like the motivation to continue just isn't there. But identity-based habits, he says, are much deeper. When this new habit becomes a part of your identity and kind of who you are, then he says you fight tooth and nail to keep that habit. And when I was reading those words, I was like, oh my word, that day that I came home, I didn't have like a big enough aha moment. From the drive from my church to my house, I had become a minimalist. Like, in my brain, I called like my husband. I was like, we're minimalists now. I had like that week I talked with my family, like, no, we're minimalists now. And they're like, no, honey, have you seen your house? You are not a minimalist. But it didn't matter to me. I just remember like this big shift in identity. And it was like, I am a minimalist. And it was like, everything kind of came clear that the reason there was like this feeling of overwhelm, because there was like a buildup that year for me where I just felt like I was suffocating and I never wanted to be home. And I just felt overwhelmed all the time. And I realized there's a disconnect between how I was supposed to be living my life and how I was created to live and how I was living: cluttered, overwhelmed, running around in a million directions all the time. And when this new habit became a part of my identity, and when I say identity, I'm not like, I'm a minimalist and that's all I am. And, it's like a slice of the pie. It's like just a piece of who I am. I'm an uncluttered person. So when I think that it's really important that we approach our decluttering, like knowing no matter what happens that day or during this busy season of life you might be in, that you can't tackle every corner as quickly as you want to. This is who you are. You are uncluttered and you're just moving in that direction, and life may get in the way, but that's okay.
Yeah, I love that you brought this point, and this is something that we talk about, I swear, in like almost every episode of this podcast. Most recently, in the giving episode of the podcast, we talked about like if you have an identity as a generous person, essentially we all have a narrative, the story of who we are and how we fit into the world and how the world works, and we behave in alignment with that story. So at every choice point, we step toward the direction of the identity that we ascribe to ourselves. So I love that you brought this into the minimalism space and really helped to explain why it sticks for some people and why it doesn't stick for other people. And I agree with you. Like I hear so many people out there who say they're aspiring minimalists. And from go, I was like, no, I'm a minimalist.
Yes, absolutely. I think the aspiring minimalist is, we just kind of think we have to make it our homes look a certain way before we can qualify for minimalism, right? Like we're not quite there, but that's not how it works. Start minimizing, call yourself a minimalist. I like kind of reference being a writer. Like if you write, you don't have to wait until like, you have a whole theme park named after your book series to call yourself a writer. Like if you write, you're a writer. And if you're actively minimizing your home, and you're becoming a more conscious consumer and shifting away from the accumulation of stuff to just experiencing life and working to live with less, you're a minimalist. It doesn't matter. You don't have to
Yes.
get to a certain point before you qualify to call yourself a minimalist.
Yes, I love that. Okay, one moment, it's a quote from your book. You say, one moment I was in my wardrobe, pushing my way through old cardigans and shirts that dated back to my college years. The next moment, I was standing in Narnia with everything I've ever believed to be true in question. What other assumptions of mine might not add up? I love how you describe this process that I've talked about so many times on this podcast of challenging your narratives, which we are called to do anytime we're confronted with a disproven foundational assumption. So I have to ask, what other assumptions did you wrestle with as a result of your minimalist awakening?
Oh goodness. Like I kind of look back at myself. I'm the oldest in my family of four kids. And so I was kind of always the person everyone came to for advice. So I thought I had to know it all, right? Like,
Mm,
and I realized in that moment that I didn't know, I don't have to know it all. And I really shifted away from being a know-it-all to being teachable and started reading more books,
mm,
both nonfiction and fiction. And I've never been a reader before that. And I started creating space and time to read. And another thing, I would always say I'm not creative, I'm not artistic, and really, like, I cannot draw to save my life. But it's okay to say, like, I can't draw, but I am creative. I feel like we all have creativity within us in one capacity or another. And so just realizing that there's just so much more to myself than I was giving myself permission to investigate. I thought like the best way to get through life was just to like know what you know forever and never waver. Right. And so I just
and
started to
convince as many people as possible along the way.
exactly. But just realizing I had creativity and little things. Like I made the same pie crust recipe. I love making pie. And I made the same pie crust recipe for like 10 years. And I thought it was amazing and it was fine. But then even down to the pie crust recipe, I use a totally different pie crust recipe and it's flipping amazing. And if I'm ever presented with another pie crust recipe, I'll try that one too. I think just taking on a posture of being teachable was something that was just new to me.
Yes, you opened your mind. I love that. On the
Yeah.
unschooling path, we often refer to that process as deschooling, where you're kind of unlearning all of these beliefs and assumptions that you assumed to be kind of beyond question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
It's so important, and it's such a better position in life to take. Like I just feel like conversations with friends, and oh, it's exhausting to try and know what you know, right? Forever. This is much better.
It's exhausting to try and know what you know forever. Oh my God, I love that. Okay. How can we help our kids through a transition into minimalism?
I think you definitely have to start with yourself. Like that day I came home to declutter, I went to my wardrobe, but it wasn't at all where I wanted to go. I wanted to go right to my kids' clothes. Not my kids' clothes, my kids' toys. And their clothes, really their whole bedrooms. It was just, I was like, my kids' stuff is the problem. But I just learned, like, I started researching that day while I was first home, like how to become a minimalist, because I had no idea. And that speaker told me about Joshua Becker, becomingminimalist.com. And so I searched there and I read a quote from him that was like, do not start with your kids' stuff. It's not fair to do that to them. And I really didn't want to like take his advice, but I knew he was right. And so I
But you're
started
trying to be teachable.
trying to be teachable. Exactly. So I started with myself. And I think that was really important. Now, when a few months later, when I got to my kids' stuff and we started diving into theirs, I kind of assumed that because I led by example, that they were going to be like, cool, mom, this is awesome. Yeah, you're right. This is amazing. But it still was a slow process. Um, so getting our kids on board, I think I remember just sitting there and wrestling with my son and like, no, this is so good. I promise it's worth it. And I realized like, this is my fault. Like, we have to do this because I let us get so cluttered. Like, I have been teaching them their whole lives that, the stuffed animal from this vacation holds the meaning of our vacation. Like, our whole memory is in this stuffed animal. And not that stuffed animals on vacation are wrong, but it was like every little thing I taught him held so much value and it was so important. And realizing that I was the one that got us so off course, right? And so I just stopped in the middle of decluttering with him and I was like, I'm sorry. Like, this is hard and I know it and it's my fault, not your fault. You are not being punished, but we're going to do things differently in this home because we want to make more time to spend together. We want to shift our focus off of this stuff. And I just don't want you to spend so much time cleaning your room, right? So
Mhm.
after that, it got easier. It wasn't like picture perfect, and he didn't like, you're right, but it just was like, it laid a firm foundation, like that we could move forward. And, every day we make little progress and then bigger progress. Oh, and we also incentivize them. Like we donated, I would say, 80-90% of their stuff, but we picked out a few things to sell on Facebook Marketplace, and we like collected all that money and clipped it to our garage door as this pile of little ones, and cash grew. And we ended up using it for a family experience. We went to a water park, and that was super. Like when we got home from that trip, it was like, was this worth it? What do you guys think? Do you remember any of the stuff we got rid of? And they really couldn't remember a single thing, and it was totally worth it. So I think that just letting them see that the letting go of your stuff isn't like their fault, it's not a punishment, but that it can be fun and worth it too. I think that was a big way to help really just seal the deal for what this was all about for us.
Yeah, I think that like you said, like if we have been teaching them their whole lives to kind of base their decisions on things like anxiety, like you're afraid you might need it one day, right? Or
Yeah.
like things like that. If we've been showing them that for so long, it's going to like collaboration is definitely important, and things like space boundaries can help with that, where you say like, okay, here's the bin for stuffed
Yes.
animals, you can pick and choose, whatever stuffed animals you want to keep, you can keep as many as fit in this bin. But ultimately there is going to be a lot of holding space that you have to do for their feelings while you help them to move through those boundaries. I think in the work that I've done with families, a lot of anxiety has come up through this process. And it's really good, like life learning that, we can feel anxiety and still make decisions toward our own well-being and a life in alignment with our values. So like to feel that feeling and to make a different choice and just allow the feeling to move through you, I think is a really good lesson, because anxiety screams in your head like avoid, avoid, avoid at all
Yeah.
costs, avoid feeling this feeling, and holding on to more and more and more stuff can help you to avoid that feeling. But kind of like a drug, you need more and more and more in order to avoid the
Yeah.
anxiety. Like over time, the stuff you had a year ago isn't enough and you need more stuff in order to avoid it. So it's good, like deep inner work that spreads out throughout the remainder of your life. So it's worth helping your kids to learn to feel these feelings and to give them skills to cope and soothe and to co-regulate with them. And then they will learn to trust that that feeling will pass, it will move through them, and we can still make choices toward our best interests even through those feelings.
Yeah. I think it's important when you're decluttering with kids, like you said about this is a long, like their lifelong journey, is to remember that what their bedroom looks like when they're 7 isn't the point of why you're doing this. The point is that
No.
when they're your age, that they're going to have a different relationship with material possessions than you do. That they're going, yeah, like you said, that you're not going to attach, need that dopamine hit as much from shopping because you've learned at a young age that it just doesn't satisfy. And like start paying attention to what's driving us to buy new things now, so that when you're older, your house doesn't look like my house did when I was 34. So
Yeah.
it's really for me about like raising kids. Like I always say, like I'm not raising minimalists. I'm raising kids in a minimalist home. And what they decide to do from, years from now is going to be up to them. But I want to lay like a firm foundation of contentment, of generosity, of putting people first. So the point, that's what I think messy minimalism is about for me, is like, this isn't what this looks like from the outside. And it's all the way down to our kids' bedrooms, because it's really tempting to want to just quickly make your house look minimalist, and then you'll feel like you've done a good job, like you'll feel calm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we become more conscious consumers? You just started to talk about that when you were speaking a minute ago. So let's lean into that. How do we become more conscious consumers?
So when my husband came home that day that I had gutted my whole closet, was like my day one, he was like, wait a minute, like, are you going to just go buy a bunch of new stuff? And that was totally my MO. He was frugal, so he would spend money on super cheap things. And I was a little bit more spendy, where I would spend more stuff and less stuff. Like I would just kind of accumulate whatever we needed. And I think it was a really fair question of him to ask of me at that moment. Like, why, if you're going to declutter and buy new things, like, what is the point of this? This is just being wasteful. So I immediately knew, like, I need to make a spending freeze. Like, we need to initiate a spending freeze in this house. And really, he didn't, because he never spent that much anyway. But it was me. I mean, from grocery shopping to impulse shopping to everything, clothes for my kids' garage. I mean, I love thrifting and garage sales too. Even there, I didn't add anything new to my house for a couple months, because I just wanted to like get an aerial view of how we were spending our money, and kind of reset my expectations for bringing new things into my house, and just start, like, create new habits. So I think that is a really important first step, is just halt adding things to your home, whether you're buying them or they're being given to you, just to kind of reassess what you actually need. And then going forward, once you initiate, buying the things you need again, pause before you buy. I think a lot of my purchases were just made impulsively. It was cute, it was on sale. And I like to try and do without now first, like, see if something breaks, like, some things are obvious. If it breaks, you need to replace it. Pause for a couple seconds, but sometimes we can pause for a lot longer and see if we can't necessarily just do without that entire item altogether. So I think just slowing down is really important for becoming a conscious consumer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have like a 1 week policy on my Amazon cart. So before I
Good,
buy
yeah.
something, like it has to be there for a week. And then a week later, if I still think that we need it or want it, then I will buy it. Of course, like if we're out of toilet paper, I'm going to buy more toilet paper.
Right.
Like there are
Right.
certain decisions that we've already made about, like, okay, we're going to use, toilet paper or whatever it is. So when it's out, I replace it. Like it doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not that ridiculous. But anytime I want to add something new, like something that we didn't previously had, or something that's not essential, then
Right.
it sits in my cart for a week, and I sit on it. And then, after it's been there for a week, then I make the decision. And I want to say probably like 60% of the things I just delete out of my cart and I never buy. Like even for
Awesome.
somebody who's
Yeah.
so intentional and really a very conscious consumer anyway, there is still stuff where I'll have an impulse. Like in a moment, it might make my life easier to have this thing, and I saw it and I'll add it to the cart. But then, like, after sitting on it for a week, I'm like, well, do I really need that? Like, no, not really. I mean, would the ease that it adds to my life be worth like the expense and the space and the management? Like overall, it'll like eclipse that initial ease in
Yeah.
just managing this object. So no, that one's really been helpful for me.
Yeah, I think that gets easier with time too, because
For
initially,
sure.
it felt like, oh, I haven't bought anything for like a few weeks. Like, what? I don't know. I felt antsy. And I think that's because it's also important to recognize, like, what is driving us to consume in the first place. Like, a lot of variables go into that, whether that be trends or comparison, trying to keep up with other people. Just if you feel stressed and overwhelmed or not happy with your body image, sometimes you're more tempted to just buy something to put on top of that. So we really have to then wrestle with what's causing us to want something new, right? So
Yeah.
this gives us the time to do that. And at first, it's really uncomfortable. But it gets easier and easier. Like I will find myself like just browsing through Amazon sometimes, even now after 5 years. It's like, okay, Rachelle, what is going on? And maybe there's a conflict I'm trying to not think about, or I'm feeling stressed about work or whatever. And it's just kind of like, okay, this is not going to fix it. And it just gives you the time to do that. But
Yeah, and the opportunity to like build up some other ways of meeting those true needs that you're actually having more
absolutely.
effectively and in a healthier way. One of my motivators too for like conscious consuming is that when I say no to like all of the junk that doesn't really serve me very well, I can say yes to the really high quality pieces
Yeah.
that do serve me very well. Like I just for my birthday, I got a pair of like zero barefoot snow boots that I had like wanted for a long time, and I'm so excited about them. And it's like they're pricey. Like I didn't
Yeah.
need or want anything else. Like so that was my sole birthday gift, and I own like 6 pairs of shoes. So like I have the space, for this thing. They replaced another pair of shoes that was hurting my feet. So no, that's like part of my motivation too. It's like, okay, so if I say no to all of this junk that doesn't really serve me, then I don't have to feel guilty at all about investing in really high quality pieces that meet my needs very well.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely. My husband used to be like, he was a really frugal person, and he still is today, but he used to be super drawn to like the um, clearance section of like the outlet stores. Like he would go digging through there and come home with a bag of stuff that like didn't fit perfectly, but it was super, super cheap. Right. And he had overflowing closet of t-shirts that were just awful. Like they didn't fit him right. Or maybe one washed through the dryer and it was like done. But now he is so much more intentional. Like he will spend more money on his t-shirts and then keep them for longer and wear them and own fewer of them.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about decision fatigue. Can you share how we can reduce decision fatigue? Talk about what that is for us.
Yeah, I think that's an important to understand when you're feeling decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is like when you are faced with either, multiple decisions in a given day, like you're just done making decisions and feeling overwhelmed. I know when I feel that way, I stop answering my phone. I just want to stick my head in the sand. Or, especially now as we're like Christmas shopping or, getting ready for the holidays, it's when you start reading like product review after product review, like if you want a pair of boots and you're like, well, what are the perfect boots and what are the best ones for me? And oh, that one has this review. And, trying to like obsessively find when we have too many choices or too many decisions in a day, it can drain our mental capacity. So the way that I found to reduce decision fatigue is first recognize when it's happening, when you're feeling overwhelmed. And then I like to call it intentional simplicity, which is just it's kind of like minimalism for your mental load, but it's simplifying as many areas of your home and your life so that you're making fewer decisions every single day. Like I have a capsule wardrobe so that I don't have, so much stuff to sift through to figure out what I'm going to wear. I have capsule wardrobes for my kids. I meal plan in a really, really simple way, which then reduces decision fatigue at the grocery store, how I'm feeding my family, how I'm packing lunches for my kids. So I think this was something totally new to me, and I didn't start developing this habit until after I had like been decluttering my stuff for a while, because I realized that you can declutter your stuff, but if your mental load is overwhelmed and you're constantly, just running on like nothing, like nothing left in your tank, then you're still going to feel overwhelmed. So just making a habit out of looking around your home and your life and your day for the ways that you can intentionally simplify so that you have more capacity at the end of the day to make, intentional decisions and not just randomly deciding or ignoring every text message that comes your way and hiding. That's what I do.
This was one of the biggest yes, reducing the amount of objects in my home significantly reduced my sense of overwhelm like on a daily basis, but this decision fatigue one really was like the spark that led to me creating my whole minimalist wardrobe class, because I was starting off each day, going into my closet and like I swear, burning through like 50% of my decision energy, of my mental load, like before the day even really started, trying to wade through like memories and clothing that didn't fit my body or who I was
Yeah.
today, and trying to piece things like now I just like having a very simple wardrobe makes my life so much easier because I'm not suffering from this decision fatigue, particularly as mothers. We make, what is it, like 30,000, like the average person makes
Yeah.
something like 30,000 decisions a day. For
Yep.
mothers, it's even significantly more because really you're making decisions not only for yourself, but for your entire family too. So
Good point. Yeah.
every area where I can front load the decision making and simplify everything, so we just kind of have one, option that I made very thoughtfully, that just makes my life so much easier.
Oh yeah, and doing that, like you said, initially, like once you make that decision, then it's made for you, right? Like I make my
Yes.
kids the same lunch every single day, and I have gotten um, people who thought that that was terrible of me to do, but they're happy with their lunch. It's a healthy lunch. I make the same lunch every day, and I know what goes in it, and I do it like in 2 seconds, and it makes grocery shopping easier. It makes our pantry more organized because everything is in the same spot every single day. So it's just simple, unless they get hot lunch, obviously. Um, but the same thing with our meal planning. I used to try so hard to be like one of those meal plan wizards with like 3 weeks worth of meal planning, and like I just is not. It is not within my capacity to do, and I don't care to do it. So now I just do a simple meal rotation where we kind of just eat the same 3 meals over and over, get takeout once a week maybe, or go out to dinner, and just rotate through the same meals. And it's just simple. And everybody's eating healthy. Everybody likes their food. It just eliminates
Yes.
conflict at the dinner table. And then, you don't have to do that forever, but depending on especially during busier seasons, just really simplifying as much as possible, knowing we don't make any plans on this day. That is a one way to just reduce decision fatigue by deciding ahead of time that this is a family day. That way, when you're presented with new opportunities, you're just like, oh no, that's that decision has been made for me. So some weeks or some times of the year, I'm a little bit more flexible and we'll make more meals or we'll say yes to more things. But when I coach soccer, and during the soccer season, all my kids were in soccer this fall for the first time ever, and it was madness. But we intentionally simplified so many areas in our life and said no to so many other things that we got through it and we enjoyed it. So
I love it. Love it. I think with between parents and kids too, there can be like decision fatigue on the parents' end, but also like ask fatigue on the kids' end. So
yeah.
when we simplify things and front load the decisions and we go over all of that with our kids, like that makes things so much easier in your relationship too. It removes some of the conflict and the friction. Like if you find that your kids are asking for things a lot, like, can we do this? Can I have that? Can we, am I allowed to, whatever all those things are, that means you would be really well served and your children would be really well served by like, make a list of all those things they're asking about and sit down with them and collaborate and establish some decisions about those questions that they're asking frequently. And then just let it be like
Oh, that's so good.
simplify.
Yeah, ask fatigue. That is such a good way to put that. I love it.
Okay, let's talk about organization. Why is another woven bin not the answer to the overwhelm problem?
Oh my goodness. I thought for years that it was. Like I thought that I had an organizational problem. So I'm a messier person. Like now that our home is minimized, it's much easier to put things away, but my natural tendency is to leave stuff out and it's always been that way as a child even. And it was always like, Rachelle, you need to clean your room. Rachelle, go organize your desk. Rachelle, blah blah blah. And I just never realized that it was a stuff problem. I always assumed it was a me problem and that I wasn't very organized. And so, grew up and went to college and tried to organize my stuff and then got married and we moved into a house and I need sorters and hanging baskets and all the things that you do to organize your stuff. And then I had kids and it was like, oh my goodness, I thought like once you had kids you just like magically became organized because you had to, but that is not how it works at all.
It's like part of the pregnancy, it grows in
Yeah,
your womb.
so that would have been phenomenal, but no, it's not how it worked out. So at one point I had like an IKEA 3 IKEA toy bins in our house, hoping that that would help store all this stuff. We paid somebody to come in and do like built-in closet system. Like that didn't help because we just had too much stuff. So I think when you recognize you have a too much stuff problem and not an organizational problem, or not even like a you problem, it becomes so much easier. And I think there is a time and a place to organize. But I look at organizing now like I do sweeping up crumbs and tidying or folding laundry. it is just a task and it will become undone and you're going to have to do it again. So it's not a sanity saving solution. Getting rid of your stuff, making space for the stuff that you love and that you use will allow your home to become more organized more easily. But then when it falls apart and your kids, it's just whether you're in soccer season or your kids aren't putting their things away, it's not because you don't need to go get more organizational stuff. You simply just have to find the time and make the time to put it where it goes, and it all has a place. So I love organization. I love looking at organization, photos, and it's very alluring.
Container store porn.
Yes, exactly. It's beautiful. But I just think for me in my brain, realizing, okay, when I organize the pantry, that was temporary. Like it's not going to stay that way. It looks good. I see everything and it's going to come undone again and I'm going to have to do it again. So organizing isn't really the solution. It's owning less stuff. It's only keeping and owning the things that you're capable of maintaining. And for some people, they're much better at it than I am, but we just need less stuff. My kids just need less stuff.
I think like the strategy of focusing on organization invites in a whole lot of shame. And when we can shift, because like you said, that makes it seem like you are the problem. Like it's a failure of who you are and your abilities and your way of being and all of that. That's the point of failure if you think organization is the solution. So when we can shift and say like, no, the way that you are is not the problem. The way you are is the way you are. And that's wonderful. We all have this like inherent way of being. Like, so that's not the problem. The problem is too much stuff. Like, so whatever your way of being is, whether it's messy or organized, whatever your kind of natural bent is, like the amount of stuff really is the problem. So if we can reduce all of the amount of stuff in such a way that it can like play to your strengths and allow for who you are as a person, like that's really where we remove that shame piece.
Absolutely. And once you get rid of the stuff, the organization, like I found I didn't need one more bin in my home. I actually started eventually decluttering the bins and the baskets because I got rid of the stuff. So I had all the organizational space and tools I needed in my home. I just needed to get rid of all the stuff at the bottom and shoved in the back of the closets that was taking up the space for the stuff I used, because the stuff I used had to sit out on the counter because there was nowhere else to put it, because all the cabinets were full of random things that I just kept holding on to because I thought that's what you had to do, but you don't.
All right, let's talk about perfection. How does perfectionism keep us stuck?
Oh, I'll talk to people that really, really want to declutter. And the first thing they'll say to me is like, well, my kids would never get on board, or my husband would never get on board, or what am I supposed to do about my storage unit, or what about all my sentimental, china that my grandma gave me? And I think what we're doing when we do that is we're letting perfectionism, like if we can't do it all perfectly, if we can't do it all exactly right, then we're just not going to do it at all. And I think perfectionism, it starts out like, and I think it was in Finish by John Acuff where I read about this concept where perfectionism starts out like, well, you could, don't even do that. But once you do that, then you have to do it exactly right. And I think that can keep us stuck in our clutter, never actually tackling it. Because though I'm a messy person, I am a perfectionist. And you'd think like, oh, a perfectionist would be really good at perfection. But I would just avoid it for so long and never take it on. So I think just get started and know you have to let go of the idea of it looking perfect and be content with slow progress if that's all you have time for right now. Because perfectionism, it's a beast.
Yeah. Perfectionism keeps us stuck. Like if we can just keep that in our mind. Perfectionism, it's one of those things that like I remember hearing people say when I was growing up, like, oh, well, perfectionism just motivates you to like try to be the best. And, it's useful. Perfectionism is really rooted in, it's like you said, it's like avoidance and shame. So either like you avoid the thing so that you don't try and fall short and feel shame. Like either way, it's not helping you. So to try, like you said, just to go into it, accepting like my home is not going to look like the minimalist Pinterest page or whatever.
Yes.
Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's we all have to keep that in mind as we do anything, but especially as we do minimalism.
Yeah, and it'll build like as you just take on small steps, like take on one room or one corner of a room and know that it might be slow progress, but it's gonna snowball. I found that it kind of builds on itself and it gets easier and letting go becomes easier and you start to realize like, well, I didn't die when I got rid of that bowl that I thought I needed. And so you feel more confident in your own resourcefulness and but yes, small steps don't if you wait for the perfect time and the right amount of time to begin, then I
It'll
fear,
never come.
yeah, you'll never do it.
Yeah. Well, will you share some of your favorite decluttering tips?
Yes, I think my most favorite decluttering tip, which I don't even know if everyone would consider it to be a tip, but is to pick your donation location first. And that seems simple, like, oh, just drop it off at Goodwill, which is awesome if that's what you plan to do. But I found like when I decluttered, I had like 50 different piles of stuff. Like this one's going here and this one's going there. And while that is so much more work, I found that it helped me get rid of so much more stuff because I knew it was going to a place. Like when I went through my um, bathroom products. I knew the women's shelter could use unused bath products, and I had a ton of stuff that I had no intention of using that might have been gifted to me that I didn't, care for the scent, but I was able to donate that there. And pregnancy services was able to take some of my baby stuff, and a friend who had twins, we were able to give her stuff. So I felt like it leaning into generosity helped me declutter my home so much deeper than I would have if I was trying to just drop it off somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It connected you more with like a mission that helped
Yeah.
to motivate you to let go of the
Yep.
things.
And then get it out of your house as soon as possible. Because I find when stuff lingers in my home, it gets redistributed back
Yes, it
around.
does.
Yeah. And then, like you talked about boundaries for your kids, but also for yourself. Like, I started looking at my cabinets as like this cabinet is a boundary, and this shelf is my boundary for my mugs or my glassware. Like, what can fit in this space? Because we would buy another, people buy hutches or, furniture to allow for their stuff to overflow into. But if you designate your boundaries and know, like, okay, this is where this is going to go, and I can only keep the number that can fit in here, and that is enough. I think that's been really helpful for us as well.
Yeah, those are good tips. I like setting a timer if you feel
Yeah.
really overwhelmed and you're having a hard time getting started. If you can set a timer for 15 minutes to declutter, like move your body in one spot, like the spot that gives you the most feeling of the biggest feeling of overwhelm. Set a timer for 15 minutes and then just whatever you can do in 15 minutes is what you get done. I think like having that timer helps. Like part of what overwhelm does is it makes you believe that it'll never end. And so
Yeah.
like having a timer gives you this really clear set, like, okay, it's just 15 minutes. Like I can do anything for 15 minutes, so you set the
Yeah.
timer for 15 minutes and then whatever you get done in 15 minutes, that is progress. And then for
Yeah.
like maintaining it, we still have a big donation bin. It's in our laundry room. Having that bin really does keep things like moving out as soon as they are no
Yeah.
longer serving us. Like a pair of shoes that my youngest outgrows will go in the donation bin. And what I do with the stuff in the donation bin can vary. Like I might post it in the Buy Nothing group, or I might, know of a friend whose kid is just below him in size, or I might drop it at Goodwill. Whatever I end up doing with it might vary. But if it's in the donation bin, it's in like a space in our house that's nowhere near anything else where nobody is hanging out and going to get things. So
Yeah.
like it is officially on its way out.
That is a really good point. The other thing I thought of that really helped us make big strides throughout the whole year is to use seasonal changes and holidays to your advantage, like even birthdays and Christmas to help you declutter, though. Even though I know people look at Christmas like, oh no, we're getting more stuff. A lot of times you can prepare before and declutter again afterwards. Like, okay, well, you're going to probably get some gifts from family. Let's go through your stuff with your kids and choose some toys you're done with that we can donate, and then after Christmas you can do the same thing, like, well, we just got a lot of new stuff, let's make some more space using those boundaries, right? And the same thing for seasons, like when you go through your closet, I go through my closet every change in season. Well, everything that I own fits in my closet. Like I don't move stuff personally, I don't move stuff like to the basement or anything like
Mhm.
that, but I am able to, I kind of move it to the back shelf and scoot it to the side, and I'm able to like look through like, what didn't I wear? What did I wish I didn't wear? Like, what is run its course, and it's definitely time to let that go. So just kind of
Yes.
using those seasons or seasonal changes and holidays to take like another big step forward, I found to be really helpful.
Yes, I totally agree. And I talk a lot about like the seasonal rotation for a lot of things, like for the bucket system course, which is like homeschooling and personal growth and chores and stuff like that. Like we have a seasonal collaboration session with our kids where we talk about like what things they want to learn and what things, they could use some support with.
Yeah.
And we like make changes to the environment based on all of that. So that concept fits in really, really beautifully and harmoniously with a lot of the things that I talk about on this podcast with the seasonal refreshing.
Oh, so good.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, to also like, as you go through your space, you're rotating toys, you're rotating homeschooling materials, and you're also letting a lot of stuff go that is no longer serving you. Because one of the things that I find has been helpful for families to think about is like a longer time span in terms of what you own. So for example, like I want my kids to have access to a variety of art materials because we are a very artistic family. Great, but they don't need to have every art material at the same time. So maybe they have like oil pastels in the fall, and then you post those in the Buy Nothing group and ask if anyone has a bunch of watercolors they're done with, and then you bring those in. So thinking about like a longer time span in the context of like the sharing economy can help to keep things moving out as they are no longer serving you. And then the rotation also keeps things really fresh.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. Yeah.
All right. There's another quote I wanted to share from your book. The reason I made myself so busy all of the time was to avoid addressing the internal unrest within me and around me. Busy is a distraction and an effective one at that. So, what did you learn about yourself when you slowed down?
Oh, I realized just how much I was trying to outrun worry. Like
Mm.
I'm an Enneagram 6, so it's kind of my thing, but it was I think you can use like there's your natural inclination towards asking what if, and in being, a more observant about danger in the world, and the Enneagram has really helped me understand how my brain works like that. But this was like kind of next level worry that I was just, if I was home too long, I would just start worrying about um, everything, everything. And so I really had to just dive inside and start investigating why and what I was so worried about, and come up with more effective coping strategies than just running out the door and going to Target and making play dates and keeping us busy. And like I said before, with my assumptions, like I being a know-it-all and being an oldest, I kind of thought it was like my job to make sure keep the peace for everybody's relationships in my life. Like I was kind of like the problem solver, and I interjected myself. Maybe sometimes I was asked to, but I just kind of felt like my job is to make this person's life like run smoothly. And just realizing like, oh, that is not at all what I was made to do. And just stepping out of that role, and nobody missed me being in there. I don't think. I just kind of like thought that was my job. I'm the oldest. I got to fix everyone's problems. Anyone in my life, right?
Yeah.
So just realizing, like, giving myself, I don't know, that was a huge part of my mental load as well. And just stepping out of that was huge for me. So and now I just love being home. I never liked being home, but I love resting and reading, and
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, you're not trying to outrun all of that inner
Yeah.
work that you need to do anymore.
Yes. And then I feel like I've just taken on a more teachable posture altogether. Like I'm open to, why am I feeling that way, and trying to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, let's move into our Q&A. I asked the Sage Family Village what questions they had about minimalism, and Caroline asks, if my desire for minimalism is in fact a manifestation of anxiety and a desire to control my environment, I wonder if accepting that my life is messy right now might be the healthiest thing to do for my mental health, a sort of letting go of control.
I
What do you
love
think?
that. I love that so much. I don't even know. I think she's 100% right. The thing I think that we need to remember is that like embracing the mess and like being okay with the mess is totally different than like living a cluttered life, right? You
Yeah.
can still embrace the mess without moving back into clutter. It's not like, well, it's not like control or clutter. are your only two options. It's recognizing when you are leaning, like, after the first couple months of decluttering, when we kind of hit that wall, and I realized that was totally about clutter, or I'm sorry, it was totally about control for me. That I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep everything running smoothly and perfectly to protect myself from feeling overwhelmed ever again, and realizing like I can either go back to living cluttered, but I know I'm not going to be satisfied there, or I can just start to embrace the mess. And so I think she's exactly right. Like, just letting go of those unrealistic expectations and trying to make your home look a certain way minimally, like as if minimalism has its own look. And know that, if she has family members, like, well, there's 5 personalities in this home, that we all relate to stuff differently. We all, our emotions are all different. So it's just going to look different as your kids grow older and as they move out of the house. It's just embrace the season you're in and know that it's not going to look perfect. And what is perfect even? Like, I don't even know. It's going to look perfect for you. That's the point of making your home minimalist, right?
Yeah, it's such a great question. Personally, there is definitely some of that within minimalism for me.
Yeah,
Simplifying my environment when my life feels out of control feels hugely therapeutic. And not in a bad way. Like, I think it's a
sure.
pretty healthy coping mechanism. Like, clean all the trash out of the art drawer. If something is like, if an election is feeling overwhelming to me and I can't control any of it, like, here's something that I can control and like simplify and make sense of, right? Like, so it's not
Yes.
necessarily a bad thing, but one could also use it as a distraction to avoid feeling some uncomfortable feelings, which they would still have to face as soon as the decluttering was complete.
Right.
Like you mentioned, when we were talking about slowing things down, I think the research shows us that a simplified minimalist home environment reduces anxiety. So I
Yeah.
still believe it to be a net benefit, even just in creating a less triggering and more peaceful container in which to do that inner work that you might be temporarily postponing.
Yeah. And I think when I heard her question, I immediately think controlling the people in our homes. And it's one
Mm,
thing to use it. I mean, it is a much better coping strategy to declutter and clean something out than it is to go buy stuff. But when it moves into like trying to control the people in your home and what they own and how they live their, day-to-day lives, that's what I found myself doing. And that is like just swinging the pendulum in the totally opposite direction. And I think there's just a healthy middle ground between embracing the mess and having good expectations for your kids that they put their stuff away and take good care of what they own, but also not letting it become control and yeah, like, does that make sense? Like an
yeah,
ineffective, like unhealthy coping strategy.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, let's move into our deep dive. The show notes can be found at sagefamily.com/podcast71, where you can also subscribe and get future show notes sent right to your inbox. What, Rachelle, are your favorite resources for people to dive deeper into this topic?
Oh goodness. um I Let me think. My favorite, like, you want my favorite books, like some book recommendations? I've got quite a few.
Whatever you think would
Okay.
help people dive deeper into messy minimalism. I mean, the first link needs to be your new
Okay, I
messy
guess, yeah.
minimalism book, but then
I often forget about that. I do think, yeah, messy minimalism. I really talk in depth about, the driving forces of consumerism. Creating a minimalist mindset, I think, is the most important foundational piece when you are making the shift into minimalism. It starts with the way you view material possessions and, becoming a more conscious consumer and decision fatigue. I address all of those things. And then I think it's just a fun story-driven book that just makes it light and attainable for everybody. I'm going to give you a couple more book recommendations too,
yeah.
because I can't do that. But like The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer is a book that I read on slowing down recently, and I loved that one.
I have not read that one.
Oh, it's a really good. It's a faith-based book, but in a way that you get so much out of it, regardless of your faith background. I loved that book. And then I said Atomic Habits earlier. I think that one
So good.
so good, so good. And then Finished by John Acuff was another one I mentioned. That one is kind of like, he has a book. Have you heard of John Acuff? Have you read any of his
No.
books? So it kind of, I don't want to say businessy. It's a really good book. He wrote one called Start, And then he realized that people don't have a problem starting, they have a problem finishing. So then he wrote finish. And I found it to be so helpful because there's a lot of information in there on perfectionism, and just overcoming those kind of hurdles. And I think it applies to so many areas of your life that it really helped me declutter my home and kind of see the process through to the end, and just know that it doesn't have to be perfect. So I would recommend those 3 books and my own. Yeah.
I will definitely add some of those to my reading list. And I'll post a link to my like minimalism book recommendation blog post. One of them, like What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You, is one that I don't hear talked about really very much, but I thought it was really, really good. And I think the author was like a therapist, so we have like a similar background. But that one is really good too. So if you haven't read that one, I think that you would like it.
Yeah, I haven't. Thank you.
Yeah. See, this is like really just 2 friends having like preparing for book club, really.
Absolutely. I love it. Oh my goodness. I could talk books all day. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Rachelle. I really appreciate you coming back and talking about messy minimalism.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.